What's up, guys? Rich here with Sablier's Grand Cru II. And it's in 44 millimeters. It's 12 millimeters tall. And it uses a 22 millimeter strap width. So if you're not familiar with Sablier watches, it is not a new brand. They've been around since 2011 making Swiss-made watches, and they are based out of Princeton, New Jersey. So really, Sablier has two claims to fame going for them. One, they are the first and only watch brand to use a concave crystal, and the entire case is made out of one piece of 316L steel instead of three different components, meaning the bezel to the case back. And it's done entirely in a polished finishing. And they did a really great job with the finishing. Lots of layers and depths to it to give it a really true mirror-like finishing, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to film, but really great job with the finishing. And I want to spend more time emphasizing on the first claim to fame, which is being a concave crystal. And what I mean by that, and I think that's a pretty good look right there. While most watches use a domed sapphire crystal or a flat crystal, the Grand Cru II uses the opposite of that, meaning it's like a teardrop. It's like a vortex where it just drops down in the center dramatically. And the point of that is to give the watch a cleaner look and a more legible dial. And I can attest to it being a cleaner look. And if we didn't know that, we should be able to see that the markers and hands look like they're pressed right up against a crystal, or almost giving it a crystal-less look. Really, a really nice clean look here. And if I rub my finger across the crystal here, it just goes down, and it's really noticeable. It is actually quite noticeable in person. A little bit hard to see that in on video here. So what I want to show you, maybe might be a little easier, is a stemless wine glass. It's the same look there. See, it just drops down in the center. It's the same purpose and the same point as on a dial. It's easier to see on this because there's a lot. It's deeper on the glass than it is from the crystal to the dial, but it's definitely there. A really nice touch. And I wanted to share Casey Wu, who is the designer of Sablier watches, his patent information here, because I find this type of information, really just fascinating reads, because it helps me connect with the watch really nicely, because I like to learn all the efforts that the watchmaker went into designing his watch. And this is an actual patent, so it's not a patent pending, it's the actual patent that Casey owns here. So a lot of effort went into creating this concave crystal here. Really nice. Going back to the other second claim to fame, meaning the one piece of steel. So according to Sablier, it takes 120 cuts of their steel mold to result in this one piece of steel. Just a lot of effort went into this watch. At first glance, it might look like a simple three-hander, except for that second hand, which we'll cover in a little bit. But there's a lot of attention to detail that went into this watch. Really nicely refined watch. So if we are a wine enthusiast or an enophile, we'll probably tell that this watch is really heavily influenced for wine drinkers. So if we haven't already noticed, we can see that red seconds hand, that's a corkscrew. And then, of course, it has a burgundy dial. In addition to this champagne dial and a burgundy dial, it's also available in sapphire, midnight, black, and white. And those same dial colors are available in an all-black DLC case. So in addition to this corkscrew seconds hand and that burgundy dial, it has this cork strap. And while the Grand Cru II is not the only brand or watch to use a cork strap, it is one of the nicest cork straps. It's also lined in leather. It's made in France. They did a really great job with the strap. It's really comfortable and just really well made. It is not a cork pattern. It's made of genuine cork that is lined in leather. Has a nice deployed clasp with their branded buckle. Just a really great cork strap. And it uses the quick adjust system there, so no tools are required. We just pinch out the pins, and makes it a lot easier and more convenient to change out the straps. But I also wanted to point out that even though this is heavily influenced for wine enthusiasts, these are standalone features. So what I mean by that is, even if we didn't care or recognize what that corkscrew seconds hand is, it's still a nice splash of red and a nice zigzag pattern for a seconds hand. And if we didn't want that burgundy dial, those other dial options are there as well. And if we don't want a cork strap, we can get a regular leather strap or an exotic strap as well. So that's what I mean by these being standalone features, which I think is smart. So we might like to watch a lot, meaning the case, which I think is smart, because even if we are not a fan of wine, these are standalone features that we can just substitute different straps for the watch and different dial colors. That makes it really purposeful for all around. So very clever. This whole watch is really well designed and really well executed, just really well thought out all throughout. Now, if we go back to the crown here, which is also that concave look, it's at the 2 o'clock position instead of the traditional 3 o'clock position. And because some crowns, and I've experienced this too from time to time, is if it's at the traditional 3 o'clock position, sometimes it will dig into our wrist. And when it does, it is really uncomfortable. So by putting the crown at the 2 o'clock position, it doesn't allow that to dig into our wrist. As the model name would suggest, this is the Grand Cru II, which is a predecessor to the original Grand Cru. In the original Grand Cru, there wasn't any lume on the dial, and they had different dial options as well. On the Grand Cru II, it is lumed on the markers. Right above each marker, we can see the lume points there. It is also lumed on the hour hand. However, the minute hand is not lumed, and I'm trying to show you why right here. I'm trying to get a good look. There's a pretty good look. Because it's bent. It's consistent with the concave crystal, the center portion of the dial, and that crown. But because to me that is a little bit more subtle and not as necessary as the other concave elements, I wouldn't mind a trade-off for that minute hand being loomed as well. Not a deal breaker, but because I don't rely on the lume of my watches, but that's the reason for it. I do appreciate the effort that they went into the minute hand, but like I said, I wouldn't mind a trade-off for that being loomed. If we look at the lugs from the top view, they look rather longer, but from the side, they're shorter. Longer from the top, shorter from the side. And that's because at the corners of the lugs, they are curved and it has that beveling there. And that's another clever design because it doesn't allow the watch to overbear our real estate on our wrist. So for someone with smaller size wrists like me, it doesn't jet past the wrist bone. So it makes wearing a 44 millimeter case quite wearable and very comfortable. So like I said, really well thought out, really well executed plans that Sablier put into their watches. If we return back to the dial, the markers are heavily polished, really consistent. They're really nice job there. Look at that with the case there. And on their branding, right above there is their logo, which is an hourglass, because in French, Sablier translates to hourglass, and the point of that is being we're supposed to enjoy the moments, our favorite moments with the watch, and that is one of the biggest reasons we really appreciate our watches is for the moments that we experience with them. So, you know, Sablier put a lot of effort into their designs and purposeful different elements to the watch. The movement that is powering the Grand Cru II is the automatic 2892A2 movement that is regulated in-house by Sablier, and they regulate the watch to +2 to 3 seconds a day. I've been getting +3 to 4 seconds a day, so the accuracy is there, and that is well within COSC standards of -4 seconds to +6 seconds a day. So all around, this is just as a well-made watch inside and out. It definitely has a premium feel to it. The retail price for the Grand Cru II is $2,795. So if we're looking for that unique watch which has some quirky features but really practical and purposeful watches that give us a really unique design, then I think the Grand Cru II is definitely worth a closer look. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you the next time. And so while the hour marker is loomed, the minute marker is not loomed, but that's not necessarily a minute breaker or deal breaker for me. Yeah.